I do feel like I'm doing a TED Talk with my fancy microphone on. Thank you all. Thank you, Jess, for asking me to do this. I think this is a new kind of format for this day, and I think it came from having like an absolute hive mind of people that are passionate about assisting people to live with MND ALS. I've just been listening to all the talks, and I've kind of made a few notes. But I think, internationally, there are so many differences in how things are navigated, differences in funding, differences in availability of multidisciplinary care. We've got geography, we've got culture. And I think, given that we live in such a multicultural society these days, even between countries, I know in Australia we are a huge multicultural society, and ensuring that we provide culturally appropriate care. But look at us all, and look at all the people online. I mean, there's 450 people, I think, attending this at the moment. Yeah, give or take, which is astonishing. And the fact that this is over 2 days now, the first MND ALS conference I ever attended in 2012 in Sydney, I think there was probably 70 allied health professionals sitting in the room, and now look at this. So it just shows how absolutely passionate we all are about this. So I think what Jess hopefully has the goal of people getting together in tables. So if you're on a table with just a few people, can you quickly just kind of merge with another table? Because I'm gonna leave you with some kind of ideas to discuss, and I want people from different countries, different regions to share the things that they are doing to assist people with motor neurone disease. Also, all the people online, we're going to have a facilitated discussion. They can apparently hear me, which is frightening. And I have been clearly told that I need to speak more slowly. Thank you, Sarah Feldman. So we have a safe word. She's going to throw something at me if I talk too fast, or if I use terrible Australian slang that you don't understand. For all of those from yesterday, a ciggy is a cigarette. Babe is pretty much what I call everybody. Mate, another word you will all know. Down the bush means going for a walk in the forest. So, it's not what other people may think. So anyway, I've got some... I was going to throw in the thong, but then I thought I won't talk about wearing thongs after the footwear discussion yesterday, because clearly a thong in Australia is not what a thong in America is. So some of the things that I have maybe just given you a little bit of a prompt to be able to talk about in your tables. I've written myself a list from the talks over the last few days, and also just reflecting on the things that we've done in our clinic over the last 15 years to improve the care of working with people living with MND, despite the challenges that we know in every country that people with MND ALS do not fit into the funding models. In Australia, they don't fit into the funding models. We've just heard in America, between what you guys call hospice and palliative care, they don't fit into the funding. So what have we done to make these people be able to live their life within the limitations? We talk about geography. In Australia, everybody lives around the edge. Few people in the middle, a very big desert in the middle. How do we get a hospital bed or an electric bed to someone like my mum who lived 4 hours from a city? Those kind of things. Like, what do we do? What are we all doing? Because we're all doing these things. Anyway, here are my slightly rogue bullet points. Bereavement. When I was sitting there listening to ALS Northwest, I was thinking, that's exactly right. Now, just to let you know that I was already working in the MND space when my mum was diagnosed. I don't work in this reason because of her. I'd worked in the area for 5 years before she was diagnosed. And I think that idea of bereavement, that as a daughter, like living in the moment, there was no bereavement going on for me. I was just like, let's keep mum at home. I was holding the space. And that idea of bereavement, like later down the track, for me would have been perfect. So I think that's something, as organisations, beautiful to think about. Equipment needs. the strategy, the phenotype. How do you fit them in? Like, how do you dance the dance with someone who you know may need a wheelchair, but is not ready to talk about it yet? Things about communication, the care team, all these people involved. How do you communicate? How does the person not have to be responsible for explaining to every single person that visits their house who else is involved? What do we do as a team to do that? Funding gaps, geography, culture, client-centred care. What does that actually mean? Care planning, again, huge depending on where you live. Ooh, where you live and your culture and different, legislation in government about, your choices about dying or living or advanced care planning. They were kind of my things. Anyway, so you have 15 minutes as tables to kind of maybe talk through and share ideas that you've done with in your area, in your country, in your region, around what. Or 10 minutes. 10 minutes. I did say that they needed to, stop me being rogue. Anyway, 10 minutes together, and then we'll come back, and each table is going to give a little 1-minute spiel on what they have kind of come up with. So you're going to not listen to me for 5 minutes, and I think that you might need to turn my microphone off. No. I'll go over the bullet point one more time. So, bereavement, post the idea, post kind of the catastrophic event, equipment needs, psychological needs, communication, written, bereavement, equipment, psychological support, communication, and how do we ensure that people know who are doing what? Geography, culture, demographics, being culturally responsive given the multicultural scenario that we live in. Client-centred care, what does that mean? Care planning and dancing the dance. So just to be clear, the idea is that we want to hear from you guys about what's keeping you up at night. Where are the gaps? How as we, as an international consortium of people who are passionate about helping people live with MND, can fill the gaps? Just giving everybody a 2-minute warning. I'm absolutely loving the fact that there is an absolute hive of discussion going on. After the 2 minutes, each table will need to nominate just one person to maybe give a little quick summary of what was keeping you up at night and what solutions you maybe are thinking about. Jess is going to come around with the microphone. So nominate your person now.
Balance and that.
I'll go.
One, and then I'll get him to do that side too. Yeah.
All right, Jess is coming over to the first table. She's head left. My left. Nope, she's going right. My right. She's going rogue. I'm normally the one that goes rogue. All right, so if everybody would like to wrap up their discussions, Jess is heading to the first table to hear about what keeps them up at night and what sort of solutions or ideas they've been discussing to let them sleep better.
Well, overall, All
right, everybody. I love that you're all talking. But... All right.
We found that there's a lot that keeps us up at night. We are from Switzerland, Sweden, the United States, and Iceland, so I had a really lovely discussion surrounding kind of the differences, particularly in terms of funding, access to equipment, insurance, and how variable that is across the international kind of sphere, and really just wanting to be able to make sure that that support is consistent so that no person living with ALS or MND feels as though, you know, they have to make compromises based on where they live or what services and insurance are available to them.
I suspect this will be a common theme. All right, we're going right. Left, my left, back table. All right, you've got to nominate one person.
So sorry for that. It's we just couldn't finish the round to tell each other who we are and how we are working. I cannot bring any results. Sorry for that.
Well, at least you've made some international connections.
Yes. Thank you.
All right.
All right. Okay. Hello. We are from Sweden and Iceland in our table, both health professionals and patients. We talked mostly about the timing of giving information, and we feel like it's hard to find that timing because sometimes the patients are not, they don't want to hear. We also, they get frightened.
The dancing the dance?
Yes, exactly. But also some people feel like they're getting the information too late. So that was our discussion.
That is really, really pertinent discussion, I think. All right, we're going my left.
Hi, everybody. We had Ireland, Belgium, and the U.S. at our table, and we also had a hard time. We need an hour.
Yes.
Next time.
I think this was a pilot session.
Committee. Yeah. We talked about sharing information to other healthcare professionals, right? Educating our healthcare community about ALS, MND, so that when we make referrals, we have trusted people in the community we can that can care for the patients that we work with. The variations of services in different countries, especially throughout Europe and neighboring countries, and in the U.S., the varying resources in different states. and managing the variety of experiences, the condition of ALS, the progression, as we've heard over and over again, it's so different. And so how do you as a healthcare professional address and acknowledge that? And you're kind of constantly adapting and adjusting. But the biggest one that keeps us all up at night is the people that we don't know about that need all of our services.
Oh, amazing. I think that is something I know that I've taught occasionally in Victoria. There are people that just fall through the cracks, and how do we catch them before they fall? All right, going my right.
A little bit the same as was just mentioned there around individuals and how much support they've got and how variable that is depending on where you live. We call it a postcode lottery in the UK. I guess it's a zip code lottery in the US. And it's that when somebody's newly diagnosed, our plan is to bring them back 3 months back to a consultant clinic or to a nurse-led clinic. What happens in that 3 months, and I guess what's keeping us up maybe, is there additional support that's required during that first 3 months following a diagnosis, thinking about the things that we've discussed this morning, just this morning, around grief and bereavement and loss and reaction to diagnosis. So I guess that's our summary.
I love that. How do we hold their space in that time?
Thanks.
Going left.
Hi, we had a small table and a quick conversation. Unfortunately, most of this table is from industry, so we don't have a hands-on experience as much as our two colleagues at the table, but we discuss a lot about the inequality and the challenges of getting funding and materials and services, no matter where you are based or where you are in your disease progression. And we also discussed what we all thought would keep us up at night, is being a palliative care nurse. But one of our table members is actually a palliative care nurse, and she finds it very rewarding. So she's lucky she sleeps well, and we compliment her on her wonderful work.
Amazing. I always say there's a certain personality of people that love working in this space. Left,
Hi,
right.
everybody. So our table is comprised of people from North America, and I think, as you mentioned, there is definitely a theme amongst all of the responses so far. We really focused on providing multidisciplinary care to patients that live in rural areas, not just within the United States, but also within Canada as well, and making sure we don't lose people that fall through the cracks. And so some solutions have been, like UCSF is developing satellite clinics within California. The Netherlands has a mobile van that can provide multidisciplinary care to areas where there's not. And just being able to provide telehealth services across state lines, but also across geographical borders, and being able to provide that care, across countries as well.
That's interesting, isn't it? Because I remember before COVID, telehealth we were doing a little bit in our clinic because we cover a whole state, but it was very clunky and it was not very well organised. And I think, if I can say this loosely, one of the benefits that came out of COVID was the ability to video conference better, to allow a bit more access for those people living in remote communities around being able to access healthcare in a different way. I must admit, trying to set up an eye gaze for someone over video conference was pretty hard, but we had to do it. All right, we're going left. It's Joe.
Thank you. Yes, hello, everybody. We had people from Ireland, from South Africa and Australia on our table, and we were trying to find what kept us up at night as a collective, and that was actually really, really hard. So I think the range of different things that we talked about was Ireland, we were talking about access to rigs and the timing, and that kind of issue is really quite stressful. We talked about inequity of resources, or lack of resources, I think, from in the South Africa instance as well. So I think, yeah, inequity of resources, I think for me is the biggest one in so many ways, depending on your age, depending on where you live, regional, rural, metro, it's just a real mixed bag.
That seems to be a multicultural or multi-country theme, the postcode lottery. Where do you live? How old you are?
Sorry.
With the light. Oh, yeah.
Hello. So at our table, we had people from Iceland, the UK, and the US. And to be honest, we spent most of the time getting to know each other and the differences within our services. I think in the UK, in Cambridge, we are a small area, but we see a large number of patients compared with the team in Iceland who have a big area and a smaller number of patients. But then we sort of realised that actually that team is not just seeing patients with ALS, MND, so they are having to prioritise things, and their time is precious with these patients, whereas in Cambridge, that's all we see. We only see people with ALS. So for us, it was sort of that prioritisation and being pulled in different directions, no matter, how big our caseloads were and how they differed. So that was probably what we were talking about.
Amazing. Going left.
Our table was from Geneva, Australia, US and Belgium. We had OTs, nurses, physio, two people from funding charities and one genetic counsellor. We talked a lot. I think we started off with the funding issues, the enormous gaps that everyone, I think, has actually already addressed. We moved on to bereavement funding, and we talked about a study in Australia that was funding psychological support for the children of people with MND, and how that has funded just 10 families. I think it's a pilot for 1 year, but it's been really well accepted. And then we kind of had a general discussion about difficult conversations, because they are connected to every section. So whether it be care planning or end of life, or the funding, or the respiratory, like Sarah Brumby's conversation, we talked about the fact that those conversations are happening all the time, and so it depends where the person is in time and who they're asking in time, and how that varies according to who that professional is. Mm-hmm. So you can get a different response at a different point in time. And I likened it to the movie Howl's Moving Castle, which, if you don't know what it is, it's a bit difficult, but it's like a castle that has legs and gets up and moves and lands in a different place. When you open the door, you exit into a completely different place. And when I see people come back each 3 months, everything is shifting. So the conversation shifts and the people shift, and the health professional has to read the room. And then the last thing we talked about was the fact that it's not just one person in the room. So you've got a partner and child or whoever is, and you have different agendas. So reading the conversation and adapting on the spot to wherever the council has landed is challenging, and because each profession has a different vision, we're all going to see it from a different viewpoint. I think that sums it up.
Definitely brings into those themes of communication and ensuring that the team is communicating the same things to someone, non-biased. But that idea that I found during COVID, when we were doing lots of things by video conference, that it was difficult to read the room when you're just looking at a head on a screen, that real kind of things that you see when someone walks into clinic, that we were losing that a little bit. So despite the benefits of video conferencing allowing people to access medical care or allied health recommendations, we lost that interpersonal, being able to read the room, see the non-verbal things that were going on. Jess is up the back.
Yeah, so we had a group from the United States, from the Netherlands, Switzerland, Denmark, and of course I live on the internet. So a bit of everywhere, really.
You're actually an AI bot, are you? Yeah.
As an AI model, I can't really answer that question because my data only goes up to January.
My avatar, yes.
So we talked about something slightly different, which is access to disease-modifying therapies. And I know we are predominantly talking about a lot of the supportive things that people do, but clearly it would help if we had more time. You know, so much of what we're managing is rapid change over time. And what is, always comes to the fore when you speak to colleagues from other countries is the latitude lottery. Why is it that I can, juggle the 5 available FDA-approved treatments in the United States, the 2 in the UK, the 2 in some of the other richest countries in the OECD, and it really is disturbing, I think, for people increasingly connected, sort of seeing that there are these disparities here. So particularly when so many participants in trials from countries have been parts of the studies that got these therapies approved, they or then the people that follow them unfortunately can't get access to them. So I feel like there's perhaps more of a global movement that needs to understand access to these therapies, because if we've got 5 drugs in one country and management of pseudobulbarafet can be pharmacological in one country and has to be different in other countries, it's going to be very difficult for us to sort of globalize our standards of care. So I feel like that sort of access is increasingly becoming a priority, and also so much of the hope that we give to people to say, well, look, there's therapies coming down the line and there are these interesting trial results, is meaningless.
Because they're not available to you.
Not available to you. I mean, I don't know how many you have in Australia, but I'll guess it's 2 as well, right?
3 maybe, yeah.
3 maybe, yeah.
Very strict criteria.
Absolutely. So I feel like, as a global group, that's something that we really have to address if we're to make care match our hope and our opportunities.
Oh, I love that. I don't love that, but I love that you're talking about that. Now, we are meant to finish at 10. Oh, no, I'm getting the okay. We've got a few more tables. Nick. My lovely colleague Nick. This is my table of my people over here.
Oh, it's me apparently.
Ah, yay.
The only non-native speaker. Hi, we are here at the table with UK, Belgium and Australia, well represented. The topic we fell upon immediately was, by chance, something that happens as well in Belgium as in Australia and definitely keeps us up at night, and that's the discrepancy in age and the support you are given in regards to that, and that there is a huge difference and people really do fall in the cracks of the system, and that we as allied health professionals and organizations try to solve these problems as well as possible within the measures of possibilities. But it's not always easy. So it's very, very frustrating, especially for the people who live with it, of course. But also since, as health professionals, we always try to hand in solutions, and the system doesn't always help us in it. I think it adds on what has already been said. But what I think is beautifully said over there somewhere was that maybe it's not as much the people who do find their way towards us who we can help, possibly, but maybe the worst thing is the people who don't find their way towards us and are lost in the system. So maybe that's a very good focus.
I love that.
Yeah.
For those of you who don't know, well, in Australia there is a very clear divide between if you are under 65 or over 65 in terms of the availability of resources. And our peak body, M&D Australia, and all of the state M&D associations have been campaigning relentlessly for that to be more equitable and have done lots of things to try and help that. But I think that's a theme as well.
I just didn't want you to take my time.
No, I'm not. See, I've been told I'm not allowed to talk too much.
So the table's essentially Denmark, and we are in Miami and United States, and a local person as well. The theme is the same, but the position is different. Denmark has a very homogeneous population, and you get resources and insurance. And the overall theme is they have the limitations of the treatments and the clinical trials. So what do you do when you don't have those resources? In our center, we kind of have the opposite. We have a very international center. We have all the treatment available. Not only that, we have multiple clinical trials. We actually have several expanded access programs, another concept that is opportunity to get something that is in there. So you can have all 6 medications, participate in a clinical trial, or we put you in expanded access program. But at the same time, we have international communities which they don't have the monies, they cannot get to the resources, and so we have this, for us, is the problem, and they worry about where they're going to send the patients for a clinical trial or how they can get these medications. For us, is we have it all, but half of the patients that come to us get it all, and half of the patients, we don't know what to do with it.
Wow.
So we have this, we call it, medical miracles, the SOD1 story. Some of the medications that personally, when we combine all of them, our patients are doing very well when they have all the medications. And these, ethical nightmares in which I can give it to you, but you get nothing. So that's sort of the big problem. And I think our group has the 2 sides of the same problem, and we saw from different angles.
Yeah, that inequity in all sorts of things, whether it be care, equipment, trials. We've got a couple of online discussion points.
Yep, they were actually repeating a lot of what was said at the other tables. So that they're providing good service according to the families they're helping, but they worry about the timely provision of wheelchairs and other equipment and so on. And they feel that their services are clinging on by threads at times, and equitable access, of course, is a problem, especially with palliative care, because eligibility is not uniform among even the same country, and it does depend what country you're in, even if you can get equipment. Everyone's trying their best, but it's also a challenge is the personal exhaustion and emotional exhaustion that comes from doing your best. They commented that a good multidisciplinary team and support network, of course, is essential.
All right, we've probably got time. I apologise if we miss any tables on it.
When I come up, that's when you start. Got 10 minutes.
All right.
Flash through.
In front.
You watch me.
Okay, we had people from the U.S., speech therapists and pathologists. We have Matthew and Paula from Canada. Paula is a patient with ALS with familial LAS SOD1. I'm from Colombia, and August from Switzerland. We talked very similar about the gray areas and everything. We're not going to add to that. But the first thing we talk is about implementing new technologies that we have seen in this meeting and how comfortable are patients with this technology. We don't really know if we are actually going to overwhelm them with this. So we need their feedback. August says something important is if they don't know, I don't know what I don't know. That concept just kept ringing on our ears. Then I asked Paula, do you feel more, since her dad, her story, her dad had ALS, and now that you know this, do you feel a better future for you? And she said, there's a potential to have a better quality of life, but will there be universal access for everybody? So besides fighting against ALS-MND, we are faced to fighting the system.
All right.
Hi. We have our table was from America, from the United States, from Switzerland, and from Canada. We have nurses, social work, chaplain, and physician researcher. And we talked about we kind of focused on what are our priorities in bereavement, finding opportunities through the pandemic to elicit some online support for people, and then the differences between availability and access to resources between the different countries, and how coherent it is, how in other areas it's not, and finding universal access or continuous access. And also the other thing we kind of talked about is the difference between palliative and hospice in the United States, and how that strict line and that transfer from palliative to hospice has built into it a loss of provider relationships. So when people move from palliative to hospice, they have to make a decision to move away from the providers that they may have been working with for years and to a new team of providers that they have to get to know and to trust. So those are some of the concerns that we identified.
All right, we've got a couple more tables. Go on, Susan.
Thanks. Our table spoke about us as a collective not having enough support in the mental health space, and I think that was really evident since COVID across the globe. And in that mental health space, you know, going through the diagnostic process, diagnosis, the time after, and then the bereavement time as well. But also, how do we look at training and educating those who are diagnosed, their friends, their families, and even the therapist around coping skills and those very vital skills that they could potentially have and utilise themselves without having to rely on the health professionals all the time. As well as Melinda touched on, how do we look at upskilling and training the up-and-coming allied health professionals in the area, in this space? We're obviously a team of people who are very passionate about what we do, and we have found our way here through different journeys. But we are also facing a generation, new therapists who are very tech-savvy. They were locked off during COVID doing online education through their universities, and I would assume they're struggling to learn the communication skills face-to-face with people. So.
Brilliant. Got maybe two more tables.
Okay. I can be brief. Our table represented UK, Denmark, Switzerland, and the United States. And we echoed the concerns of our colleagues from Sweden and Iceland across the room regarding customizing the timing and content of education provision and to the needs and preferences of the person served and their families, while ensuring that we're providing proactive and anticipatory guidance to these families so that there are no surprises in the journey. And we underscored the importance of establishing trust between the care team and the persons and families served as a means to help with that balance and conflict.
Hi, our table is from the U.S., and I would say most people are on the genetics side, and I'm an SLP, so we ended up talking about AAC stuff, and we were just getting to know each other. So I think we just touched upon the issue of some barriers to AAC for patients and families, and how a lot of that can just be internal, and some of it can be generational, and it's very complex. But we just talked about some of those issues. And I just want to say that I love your analogy of the house moving castle. Having seen that movie, it really brings to mind just what a confusing process it is for patients and families.
Thank you.
Augmentative and alternative communication. Okay, sorry.
I think that is all the tables. Oh, one more. No? Well, thank you very much for participating in this sort of robust discussion, and I know we could probably talk all day about the things that are keeping us up at night. I think the overwhelming theme that I've heard is that we are so passionate about filling those gaps, the gaps in funding, the gaps in care provision, the not letting people fall through the cracks. And, for me, it is such an immense privilege to not only be involved with the many people that I assist every day, but to be here with all of you. We've come a long way. And I just look back in the 15 years that I've been working with people living with MND ALS, and I am so, so happy that despite the gaps that we are seeing, there are just all of us pushing really hard to ensure that the people that we are assisting are not let down by the systems that we live in, that are, you know, run by different governments. In Australia, we've got government change, legislation change. I'm sure that's the same in all countries. But despite all of that, we continue to just keep forging forward to ensure the best quality of life. And I will continue to make smoking aids and drinking aids until I retire. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you for speaking relatively
very slowly.
Oh, very slowly for her. Sorry. Yes. No, I also found this to be an absolutely fascinating discussion. I took lots of notes to take back, as I'm sure many, many of you did as well. Thank you so much, everyone here, for being willing to be participatory as well. And apparently we need 5 more minutes so that at the initial stage, so people can get past the who are you and where are you from?
We'll take note for next year.
And again, hopefully now you've made some new friends that you'll leave here with. That concludes the morning session. I know you're all excited about that.